There's not a day that goes by, good or bad, that I would trade what I was doing for what I'm doing now. When I think back to kind of where I started and kind of where I'm at now, the paths are very confusing and kind of long-winded, but I think deep down I knew that I always wanted to do something in medical. My name is Ryan. I'm a brother, a son, a gym goer, and a runner. I'm an associate area sales manager. I cover the state of South Carolina for my company. We are an energy-based device company. We sell medical aesthetic lasers to plastic surgeons, dermatologists, and medical spas that have physicians that are attached to them. So the beauty of what I do, I think, is that I don't think in over a year of doing this that any 2 days have been the same. I think the cool part of what I do is truly, I don't really know where I'm gonna be probably until about the week of what I'm doing. Day to day, I've kind of found that really there's not enough hours in the day to get everything done that you need to get done in this role in general. So I'm an early riser. I like to wake up probably by about 5:30 or 6 every morning. That's kind of my more like quiet time to kind of get things done personally. I like to either go to the gym or run in the morning. Kind of after that, I'll hopefully the night before have created some kind of call list for kind of what accounts I'm going to go hit that day based off whatever part of the state I'm in. That's kind of another, I guess, cool part is that you're always on the road. You're always constantly, one day I could be in Charleston, one day I could be in Columbia, one day I could be up in Greenville, Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach. Like it all just depends on kind of what's going on for that day. So typically I'll have a call list, a call log that can be anywhere from 10 to 15 accounts a day that you are pulling doors, actively going into these offices, these dermatology offices, plastic surgeons offices. And really the whole goal, along with managing current accounts, checking in on them, making sure they have everything they need, you're actively looking for new leads, which is probably the most rewarding but probably the most challenging part of the job in general. Specifically day to day, you'd be going into these offices trying to set meetings with, whether it be a provider of theirs, whether it be the physician that's in there. So the goal is to set meetings. The goal is to try and get time on the calendar to sit down with them, talk about what their menu of service looks like and kind of how maybe you can tailor something that you have to kind of fill a gap in that menu. And then from there, it's just a lot of, managing issues that happen in the field, whether it be a system goes down, whether it be someone needs extra training, you're kind of always on call for that as well. We don't specifically have a post-sale person, so it's kind of all falls onto us. So kind of in a long-winded answer, there's no way to really tell you what one specific day is going to be like, but just that no two are the same. When I think back to kind of where I started and kind of where I'm at now, the paths are very confusing and kind of long-winded, but more or less, I graduated from a military school here in South Carolina called the Citadel. Out of the Citadel, the reason I went there more than anything was to find a good job. I always heard that the alumni network was phenomenal there, and that's why I wanted to attend it. Out of school, I kind of had a B2B sales job that I knew. It was with a very reputable company, very big company. It was very safe, it was very consistent, and I think it ended up not being very fulfilling for me. I worked that job for about 2 years, and my whole end goal was to hopefully get into some kind of medical sales. I think, trying to get into medical device sales right out of college can be very challenging. A lot of these companies expect you to have a certain number of years of experience before you get on. So thankfully, the job that I had prior to the one that I'm working now, I was able to get some really good experience. And just really B2B, like just, pulling doors. It was with kind of a different industry, kind of more in like the oil and gas space, which can sound kind of cool, I guess, but it really wasn't for me. I reached out to Kendy here at the lobby through a mutual friend that actually we have here in Charleston, and just kind of put on his radar that I was actively looking for something in medical device sales. Didn't really know what I wanted it to be yet, but knew that that's kind of where I wanted to go. It was what always interested me. And I think we went through probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 different opportunities that he'd kind of come to me with. And, we were always kind of like maybe that's okay, maybe that's good. And I was like, I'm not going to leave where I'm at unless I know it's a really good option and something that's really, really kind of attractive to me and something that I really want to pour my time and effort into, because more than anything, I just felt like the job I was working at before, I just had all this untapped potential I wasn't really tapping into. I had all this time and energy to put toward work that, more or less I was able to get my job done in like 20 hours a week. And I always wanted something that was challenging, coming from the Citadel of military school here in South Carolina. My day-to-day was always very challenging and rigorous, and I found a lot of comfort kind of in the chaos of that. And I knew that I wanted to find something that kind of aligned with that. So the journey more or less was, Kendy reached out after him bringing me 4 or 5 great opportunities prior to that with the company that I work for now. And upon further research, upon truly a grueling and rigorous interview process with them, and a lot of thought with myself, I just found that it was a great fit for me. It aligned perfectly with what my values were and kind of what I wanted my day-to-day to look like. So more or less the journey was kind of that, just putting a lot of hope into the idea that what I was doing was going to be worth it in the end. And, I kind of just took this angle of I'm just going to bet on myself and hope that it all works out. And it's been a phenomenal year and, probably the best decision that I've made to this point. So it's been a phenomenal journey so far. I think outwardly looking in, everyone looks at med sales as this like get rich quick kind of thing, like where you get in and you make all this money and like it's just super easy. And outwardly looking in, that's what ignorantly I thought as well. I thought the same thing. I thought, there's a lot of money in that because you hear there's a lot of money in that. But what I think a lot of people kind of fail to do is peel the onion back a couple more layers. And, there is truly a ton of hard work and sacrifice that goes into when you hear those success stories of people making a lot of money and doing those things. So I think deep down I knew that I always wanted to do something in medical. Growing up, I think I had 4 complete knee reconstructions before I turned 18. So I always had kind of a passion for that process and a respect for the process of like getting people back to being healthy again. So I think that obviously what I do now is very different from that, but I think the conception of the idea came from, kind of a journey that I went through in my younger years of trying to rehab from injuries, and, kind of all of the hands that are in the pot of kind of making someone get back to, their healthiest self, back to playing sports, which was kind of what I looked at it as. So I think that's kind of what started the idea, and then obviously it's kind of molded and changed over time, but that's kind of what started it. My interview process started around mid-March of last year, and I think that it probably took a good 5 weeks to fully get through. It started with multiple phone screenings through HR, multiple phone screenings through my current manager now, who's phenomenal, and we have a great relationship. And I'll never forget it was probably the second or third time we had talked on the phone, and he basically laid out this this map of kind of like what the next interview processes were going to be like. And after I talked to him, I think I had 6 or 7 additional interviews after him. And I'll never forget, I was actually, I was driving to the airport. I was supposed to be in Miami for the weekend. I was just going with a couple buddies. And my hiring manager on the phone, I told him, hey, I'm going to be in Miami this weekend. Would love to reconnect next week whenever you're, around, so we can kind of set up the next process. And I'll never forget, he was like, hold that thought. He was like, I feel like there's something going on in Miami this weekend where a couple of the people you're interviewing with are going to be a trade show there. He was like, just hold on, like, let me call you back. And he ended up calling me back and was like, is it too late for you to turn around and pack a suit? He was like, there's a huge convention going on in the Miami Beach Convention Center this weekend. If there's any chance you can get by there, your next 4 interviewers are going to be at this show. And in my head, I'm like, the last thing that I want to do is go interview with these guys there. But I knew deep down that if I turned around, packed a suit, and interviewed with these guys, my chances of getting the job were going to be much higher, because I think what I've learned now is anything you can do to be bold in that process, anything you can do to really stand out in that process and really kind of separate yourself from the pack, I was going to jump at any opportunity to do that. So it was a no-brainer. Turned around, packed a suit, ended up flying to Miami. Didn't hear anything the first day. And I'll never forget, we were out, my phone had died, and I'd gotten back to the apartment. It was super late. Plugged my phone in, and I got an email at like 11 o'clock that was like, hey, meet us at the Miami Beach Convention Center at 7 a.m. the next morning. And that was like at like 3 a.m. So it was very late. And I was like, oh my God, I was freaking out. I was like, I didn't know what to do. My suit's a crumpled up mess in my bag. I've got no resumes printed. So I was like, all right, like this is the kind of make or break moment here. Either you can kind of just like figure it out or go to bed, and like it's just kind of is what it is. Because at this point I didn't really have a ton of time committed to it yet, but I remember I walked to a 24-hour CVS, I printed out my resumes there, I bought a steamer, steamed my suit, printed my resumes out, got all my questions ready, ended up not going to bed that night, literally stayed up all night long, which I would not suggest doing before a big interview, but had to be done for this. Ended up driving an hour to Miami Beach and interviewed with our director of sales for the Southeast, our director of sales for the East, our VP of sales, and our CEO. All 1 hour interviews, all during that same morning from like 9 to about 1 on no sleep, keep in mind, and ended up doing a phenomenal job for those interviews, which I didn't know at the time. It was such a blur to me kind of getting through that process during that day, but I'll never forget, I got to the last one, they kind of all kept kind of passing me off to the next one, and I was like, oh, that must be a good sign, like I'm talking to the next guy. And I got in front of our VP of sales, and he was like, I heard about your story, man. He was like, it's crazy, you're here on vacation and you're interviewing with us. And I was like, well, you know, I knew I had to stand out to you guys somehow, and I knew that, you know, if I was interviewing someone and I just happened to be in the same city as them and they just didn't want to see me and talk to me, I probably wouldn't hire that person. So I knew deep down that, you know, kind of making those sacrifices, being bold, doing things like that, that's what it takes to really stand out in that process. I mean, I remember my hiring manager saying they'd gone through, I think, 78 applicants to that point, and he was like, you were the only one that kind of stood out in that way. So, you know, it was all kind of luck that Miami just happened to be the same weekend they were all there. But, you know, I look back at it and, you know, I capitalized on that moment, and being there at 3 a.m. in the apartment and thinking like, I don't know if I can get this done, and figuring out a way to get it done, kind of jumping through those hoops. It all kind of aligns perfectly with what kind of the job entails now. The reason that I'm doing this, the reason that I'm putting myself through this, the reason that, you know, I'm doing a job that is very hard is, you know, I think more than anything, I'm trying to set myself up for financial freedom in the future. I think to me, that's what I grew up and seeing in my own parents, and seeing that, you know, you have to work very hard to get the things that you want. And I'm not someone that wants to be given anything. I want to make it for myself. So my why more than anything is, you know, hopefully, you know, through this process, through, you know, years of hard work, years of success, maybe years of not so much success, you know, that I'll set myself up, set, you know, a family up one day to be financially free, to kind of be able to do the things that we want to do. That's kind of the luck that I had, kind of being born into a family with the same situation. You know, my dad was a very hard worker and set us up for financial freedom. And I think that, you know, if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't be on the path that I am now. So I think that I'm hoping to offer that to someone one day. I don't have a family, I don't have a wife or anything, but I think that I'm preemptively looking to those, you know, conceptual people down the road, and knowing that, you know, kind of what I'm going through day to day is gonna set myself up and set them up for, you know, a good future. So I think that through the minutia, through the long days, through the, you know, kind of more low lows, that's kind of what keeps me going more than anything. It's just kind of like looking to the future for those things, and not really knowing when those things are going to happen, or, you know, when I'll have time for those things to happen. But, you know, hopefully one day I'll get to a point where, you know, I'll allow that freedom to kind of be placed through hard work. So that's definitely what keeps me going through this whole process. If I could go back and tell myself anything, it would be to like be more patient with myself. I think that's something that everyone can work on. Knowing that, you know, having a hope and a faith that everything's going to work out the way it's supposed to. And it's like I'm sitting here saying this now, and like I'm still not very patient with myself, and like still like kind of like actively working on that for myself. But I think that being more patient with myself and kind of not allowing things that I can't control to bother me. We always talk about, kind of controlling the controllables, and, that's all we can really do. The outcomes are going to happen regardless. All we can do is, put the work in. And thankfully over time, I was kind of blessed to be in a family that, really challenged and really prioritized like being hardworking and like bestowing that upon me. So I think that consistent theme has kind of followed suit with what I'm doing now. But I think that being patient with yourself, knowing that in the end, as long as you're doing the right things, it may not work out immediately, but doors close for a reason, doors open for a reason. I look at kind of where I'm at now compared to what I was doing before, and there's not a day that goes by, good or bad, that I would trade what I was doing for what I'm doing now.